Welcome to the Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast, brought to you by Donohoe, the home of Irish dairy.
The report talks about how dairying is going to expand. We know that, but I think there's going to be an output from the dairy sector in terms of calves, which are not going to be needed in this sector. So the report talks about maybe better breeding policy. These calves could perhaps be taken up to an increasing degree by the beef sector. So there are other ideas as well, I think, about how we just make the dairy beef sector more climate efficient.
How do you go with implementing such things like that?
Well, I think that
even getting a cow calving per year or culling empties.
Yeah, well, I think you're back to a combination of either incentive systems or better farm practices. I mean, we are talking all the time here about trying to align incentives in the direction that you're trying to. If you want to achieve something, you shouldn't have incentives pulling in different directions. Now, we don't get into the detail of that, but I think the principle is very important, and I think it's up to the policymakers after that to examine issues like that. I think that this is where ultimately I think we need to discuss this. We are faced with a few realities. One reality is dairying is going to expand, and there's a complete logic to that. It's where our comparative advantage lies, and we can do economically, etc. We have to make sure that expansion takes place in areas that can environmentally take that. But then we have other responsibilities of reducing our emissions. And if we have particularly very inefficient systems for producing beef, which have as a consequence high levels of emissions, maybe we can look to see how the whole sector, i.e. the dairy plus beef, can work together to deal with that.
And finally then on my side, a very emotive issue we're seeing in a certain county in Ireland, Leitrim, with regard to forestry.
Yeah.
Are we there yet? Are we ready?
No, we're not. And in fact, there's a piece in today's journal which you may have written. You may have seen Tom Curley and myself, both joint authors of that. And that's one of the examples where I say, there are some issues in the report that we're acknowledging, but we're not having the answers to. And it is a very legitimate issue to say, look, quite obviously we need to increase our forestry for all sorts of reasons. Some income reasons for farmers, others to increase the carbon sink, like Eugene Hendricks was talking about. But there's very legitimate concerns about the future of rural communities, social infrastructure, and we're going to have to face up to those and talk about those things.
The Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast, brought to you by Donohoe, the home of Irish dairy.